It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador became the new left president of Mexico just a few months ago on December 1st, promising radical change in a country that has suffered from conservative monetary policy for decades. A new report by the Political Economy Research Institute at UMass Amherst finds that conservative monetary policy has suffocated public investment in Mexico and has such caused an overall and prolonged decline in productivity. Well, with the new government of President Lopez Obrador, Mexico will have an opportunity to revise this trend. This paper, titled Monetary Policy in Liberalized Financial Markets, The Mexican Case by Santiago Caprero and Carlo Panico. And Carlo Panico joins me today from Mexico. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Panico.
Thanks to you. Good morning.
Now, Professor Panico teaches economics at UNAM and at the University Federico II of Naples in Italy. Now, Professor Panico, you lay out a basic inquiry in this paper. So tell us about first the inquiry, and then we'll dig into the findings a little bit later.
Okay. Well, the inquiry wants to examine how in a country like Mexico, a Latin American country, an emerging country, has to deal or can deal with the present situation of financial liberalization, in which the financial industry has become very strong and powerful. So what happens in this country is that there is a primary objective of monetary policy is to defend the country from speculative attacks. So, but the way it has been done recently, it has put some difficulty on the economy. It has been suffocating public investment, reducing public investment, and it's having negative effects on the economic structure on the industrial structure of the country, on the capacity to compete at international level. The data show exactly that since public investment are shrinking and reducing continuously, then when we have that the economic structure of the country is getting weaker and weaker, and international competitiveness goes down, and then we have to do something about that, because if you don't do something about that, I mean, if the monetary policy does not do something about that, what is going to happen that the probability of speculative attacks against the country, against the financial structure of the country, will increase. And this is a real danger. So even if in the last 20 years, the Bank of Mexico managed to keep financial stability and defend the economy and the citizen from speculative attack coming from abroad, I mean, the probability that this will not happen in the future is going to go down. So it's better than the central bank and the government take notice that something must be done to devolve in some way, give back discretionality to fiscal policy, to governmental policy, and then this policy is used efficiently to improve the economic structure, the productive structure, and international competitiveness. This is what the study tried to show. And we, in this study, try to identify how that can be done. Because this is not only a problem of Mexico, a problem of the majority of the country in the world. And this has been discussed now, a 30 year of discussion about how to reform institutional organization of economic policy in order to tackle this problem. And in some country, I mean, new solution has been found and implemented. So even I think that also in Latin American countries and in Mexico, this has been done to reflate the economy and to strengthen and to make the economy working better.
So you argue that the goal of restrictive conservative monetary policy is to maintain economic and financial stability at all costs. But paradoxically, this stability is not achievable under this kind of monetary policy. I think that's what you would argue. So indeed, you show how the volatility in the exchange market has increased with the rise of monetary conservatism. Explain to us, how did this happen, and what are its effects on the Mexican economy?
Well, what is happening in the last 20 years in Mexico is that financial stability has improved. We have had no speculative attacks against the country in the last 20 years. But growth has gone down, distribution of income has become more unequal, and I mean, if you look at the data, international competitiveness has gone down, so the current account of the balance of payment has worsened quite a lot. This is the trend. When you have that the current account of balance of payment worsen, then the probability that you will get speculative attack from abroad goes up. So this will not work as time goes by. It will work for a certain period, and then you are having a high probability of receiving a speculative attack. So financial stability in the long run is not attainable in this condition. So what we have to do is you have to keep the reputation and the credibility that the central bank has with respect to the international operators, and at the same time you must induce the central bank and the government to work together in order to strengthen the international competitiveness of the economy. This is the key.
Professor, you talk about international competitiveness. Exactly what do you mean by that? And then, of course, end this interview by telling us how specifically you would advise the government in terms of what to do to address this problem of public investment that's necessary for competitive reasons.
Well, the international competitiveness is the capacity of a country to export more than they import, that the country imports. So this is the international competitiveness. If you look at the data, the international competitiveness of Mexico is going down. In the last 20 years, has gone down and down, slowly but firmly and steadily. So this is very dangerous for the country. If in this moment the Mexican government would try to attempt an expansionary policy, the first things that will come out, you will have a worsening of the balance of payment, and then this will limit the possibility of implementing such a policy. So you must take into account that this is a constraint, it's a strong constraint on any possibility of growth in this country. So you must intervene on that. And the way to intervene on that is to have very clear information about how to avoid that an expansion of effective demand in the country through a governmental policy or through a redistribution of income, how you can do that this deficit in the balance of payment is going to be not so strong as to generate a speculative attack against the exchange, to make the pesos, in particular. You need information. You need to be very efficient and punctual. Very on the point to avoid that. This is what I would suggest mainly. Don't do things without having this information. And this information nowadays are less developed than 40 years ago, than 30 years ago, because the institutions that were collecting and elaborating this information are not collecting them as they did in the past. If we think that NAFINSA, which is a National Bank of Development in Mexico, is not doing that anymore. So if you now try to do this sort of expansionary policy, you don't have the real information, the true information about what is going to happen to the balance of payment. How can reduce the negative effect of the balance of payment? This is a first point. And then, I mean, there are resources available for the government into the central bank, which can be used. But this can be used efficiently and cannot be used against the will of the central bank. I mean, there must be an agreement on the way these resources are used to avoid further problems.
With Professor Carlo Panico, who joined me from Mexico City. He teaches at UNAM and at the University Federico II of Naples, Italy. Professor, I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you to you. Bye-bye.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.